When I heard of the new FPS RoboCop Rogue City coming out, I quickly took up to YouTube to check out what the reviews or previews for the game were for this game, but quickly noticed that every review I could find out there on the internet on this game would mostly ride off of the back of nostalgia and constantly compare it to the classic movie that is RoboCop. However, there is an issue. I've never seen RoboCop, and I love FPS games, so if I can't relate to the references and nostalgia, is this game still a good game? First, I feel we have to talk about the visual elephant in the room, which is the graphics of this game. The graphics for this game are absolutely beautiful. While on the same note, I have absolutely zero performance issues. Granted, I am on an RTX 4090, but even then, for most games, I still encounter stutters and FPS drops at launch, but this game has been an absolutely buttery smooth experience, and I've got nothing to complain about in that regard. Now back to the graphics, the scenery in this game is absolutely stunning. All of the levels are full of details and the environment just looks great. On top of that, I love that this game implements a lot of destructible walls and pillars, which really add to the gun-blazing atmosphere you often find yourself in when going through the various stages in this game. The one graphical flaw this game has, though, is the character animations. The lip sync on the different models across this game is just absolutely dreadful, and oftentimes the voice lines coming out of the character's mouth don't even sync with the animations, which leads to a fair degree of loss of immersion, especially considering how everything else looks flawless, and then suddenly you're hit with these.
What in the hell?
Graphics aside, the storyline is what I'm assuming is full of references and throwbacks to the old fans of RoboCop, but personally I have not yet fully beat the game yet, even though I believe to be nearing the end, and so far the story has been pretty forgetful. It's nothing that's really going to hook you in if you're not familiar with the RoboCop universe. At first, I found myself paying a lot of attention to all of the details and dialogues and such, and eventually I caught myself half skipping through a lot of the dialogues due to how uninteresting a lot of it was. Again, I'm sure it's a lot more attractive if you're an old fan of RoboCop, but for someone who's never seen the movies, to me, the story is pretty forgettable. Now, let's move on to the juicy part of this first impressions. The gameplay. I've seen in a couple of reviews mention how the game is open world, but this is not true. The game is not open world at all. You do find yourself in sort of like levels. Within these levels, you have a very limited amount of space to explore, but still some space to explore, so it's not completely linear. Of course, the main story is linear, but once you get to these particular levels, you're usually offered a couple of side objectives, which grant you XP if you complete them. But that's about it when it comes to exploring the universe. Once you do proceed with the main story, however, you do end up moving up to another level, and any side objectives you didn't complete before, you cannot return to. So your best bet is to be completing those side objectives pretty much every level you enter. The game also involves a very small degree of detective work. At first, I was under the impression that I was going to be doing some detective work to figure out myself who the bad guy was. But really, sadly, it's just placebo. It doesn't actually matter whether you figure it out or not. The game will hold your hand the entire way through all of the detective work, telling you exactly where to go, exactly what to scan, and exactly who to accuse, and you don't actually end up having to do any thinking, which was very disappointing for me, but yeah. That's what ended up being the case, and one of the major reasons as to why I found myself oftentimes soft skipping a lot of the dialogues is because I felt pretty useless to the detective work in itself. Now here's the really good part. Thankfully, the game has really satisfying gunfights. I'm a long-time FPS player, and combat is the absolute king of priorities to me when it comes to FPS games. The gameplay is smooth. The mouse doesn't have any weird force setting like mouse smoothing or mouse acceleration. It works exactly as it should, just like any proper FPS game should. The combat is also meaty. Feedback sound from hitting headshots is very satisfying, and so is blowing up their heads when you hit them with a nice shot right in their foreheads. Yeah, that never gets old. One downside, however, I found to combat is that basically every weapon is irrelevant when comparing with the trusty Auto 9, which by the way is your main weapon, which is this little pistol right here. This isn't a spoiler as you find out about this very early on in the game, but you are given a lot of ways to strengthen your side pistol, which is the Auto 9, which eventually gets so strong that pretty much every other weapon in the game is irrelevant. That was kind of a bummer. And while on the subject of strength, I'm playing the entire game on the hardest difficulty, which is labeled as extreme, and I must say, this game so far has been quite an easy experience. Now I do bring a lot of FPS gaming experience onto this game, but still, I've died maybe 2 times in my 8 hours of playing this game, and I haven't even been building my character for damage or vitality. I've just been building him for more XP gains and some other utilities that add very little to combat. I believe the reason as to why this game feels so oddly easy is because that even at the highest difficulty, your enemies still die to one shot to the head, which I must admit, I absolutely love that. It sucks when FPS games suddenly make your enemies be able to shake off 5 shots to the forehead. RoboCop, however, doesn't do that. Your enemies can still be one shot as long as they're not wearing any sort of armor to protect themselves. And what about the RPG element to the game? The game allows you to upgrade yourself in various ways, which can increase your damage, increase your armor, gain more XP, and also abilities, such as being able to slow down time and being able to dash around to make yourself move it around a little bit faster, which by the way is a fantastic addition as the RoboCop is a very slow and clunky character. Every upgrade also feels very massive, and that's something that's been very fun to work with so far, as you actually feel yourself getting a lot stronger as you invest into the skill set you are seeking out. There is also an upgrade element, as I mentioned earlier, to your trusty pistol, which can make this weapon dramatically more powerful than it already is. I mean, so much so that I've been able to upgrade my Auto 9 to do well over 100% more damage and become an automatic weapon, as well as many other upgrades, which I'll leave out for you to find out for yourself. This does add a strong feeling of progression in your character as you invest into yourself and your weapon. I don't necessarily feel though as if builds are such a big thing, seeing how the game has been so incredibly easy so far, even on the hardest difficulty. The game doesn't end up forcing you into min-maxing your character, seeing how it's so easy. Also, you pretty much only use one weapon for the vast majority of the game, so there isn't much of a loadout approach when it comes to that. But overall, the game has been a great time altogether. I am, however, predicting a very low replayability, as builds don't really seem to matter too much, and the story is already getting old on the first playthrough. I can't even imagine on the second one. Not entirely sure yet what awaits for me upon completing this game, but I feel this game would work fantastic with some sort of horde-like gameplays, as combat in this game is the absolutely best thing, especially coming from someone like me who's got no nostalgia bound to this game and is truly treating this game as I would treat any other game. Overall, so far, I definitely recommend getting this game. That $50 price tag can be quite rough, but if you do manage to get your hands on this game, I'm sure you'll have a fantastic time, even if you are unfamiliar with the RoboCop world, just like me. So that'll be all for today. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.